I need to specify something right now. I've waited a long time to bring this back. And I've waited a long time to talk about this episode. Because this was an episode that once upon a time had to be the most memed episode out of season 1. Besides, of course, next week's episode with the Sonic Rain Boom. This episode, at the time, rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't know why. Now that I'm older, because this is a 8-year-old episode. No, it's a 9-year-old episode. Christ. This episode hit me while I was rewatching it like 2 weeks ago. This has to be the first episode of the show that, in my opinion, was -5 stars.
Oh boy. The allegories for this episode are insane. This is where, number one, we found out that Josh Coulter was a Christian. Number two,
he let us know about that one.
Secondly, this was also one where everyone could not stop about talking about the religious allegory.
Yep, and whether it was meant to be present or not.
Exactly, whether it was intentional or not.
Lauren Faust, I was telling John, thirdly, Lauren Faust doesn't like this episode, and Dave Polsky, who is an atheist, said this episode could have been done better in that it wasn't meant to be a religious allegory.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the first Dave Polsky episode ever written.
Yes, and let me tell you, I did not believe this was a Dave Polsky episode watching this episode. I'm not saying he's great. I mean, he's not the boy Corey Powell. But there was a point, if you'll remember back to our season 4 days, where me and John would just be like, dude, Corey and Dave are just Corey, Dave, and Meriwether Williams, back when everyone thought Meriwether Williams was the best writer on the show, we're like, dude, which is a weird mindset to be at now, because now she runs the show. But we were like, dude, these are the 3 dopest dudes that write for this show.
Don't you mean Megan McCarthy?
Megan McCarthy, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Meriwether Williams is the second worst that they've ever had.
Yeah, she did bats, though, so that was a good thing.
Stop the bats. But yeah, no, this episode, maybe it's as simple as when you get older, you get more opinionated. Someone told me that once. And I'll agree that that's probably valid. But I feel that when you get older, for most people, I think so anyway, your opinions become more refined and defined.
Mm-hmm.
And watching this episode now, I was like, boy.
I'll say this. It wasn't a terrible episode like Griffin the Brush Off or Ghostbusters in terms of like overall quality, but I could definitely see where it rubs people the wrong way.
If it makes
and that could definitely change opinions in that way.
If it makes the old school purists and the season 1 marks feel better, don't worry. This episode does not job as badly as Three's a Crowd, okay? That is still my least favorite episode.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I agree.
I mean, who knows? Maybe one day I'll rewatch it because we're tricking you, because you're all thinking once we get to the end of season 3, well, that's it. No more pony reveals. Au contraire, mi amigos, because then we're going to go through the rest of the series again with newfound eyes because we're rewatching these older episodes. And then we'll have to go through, it's a never-ending cycle of reviews. We'll have a series, but it's a sequel. It's a sequel.
Pony Reviews a sequel.
Back in the 80s when they just threw together Robotech and like Lacrosse and then called it one show. That's what we're gonna do.
First of all, when the fuck were you gonna talk to me about this? And second of all, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I don't know. I mean, unless we're going to try and resurrect pony psychology.
We might have to. There just hasn't been too many episodes that's really like gone through with it.
Starlight Glimmer. Starlight Glimmer. Starlight Glimmer.
In some respects, not at all.
Starlight Glimmer. Her virgin childhood friend, Starlight Glimmer. Rarity. Have you seen the mental breakdowns that chick? Everyone always used to think that Twilight or Pinkie Pie was the breakdown queen of this show. Boy, it is Rarity. We've seen her cry more times than a freaking anime female protagonist. It's ridiculous.
All right, we should probably get on with the episode.
I'm just trying to state the facts, sir.
Uh-huh. Facts don't care about your feelings. So this episode starts off with Twilight is trying to change objects into other objects. So Spike has this like grass, like this leaf necklace, and a stick and a rock at his head. And she's trying to turn it into a 3-piece suit for him. And my God, he looks dapper in it. Just gotta say.
I know what that word means.
Mm-hmm. I know big words. But then he stops concentrating. And I have to say, this is something that I said in the commentary, but I have to say it again here. Twilight said you need the full concentration to make it happen. I cannot stand when people say that. When people say make it happen, that's telling me, saying it's me literally wanting to go up to him and saying, okay, fuck you. So basically he gets bonked in the head. So I'm wondering if this is going to be an episode of Bonk's Adventures. You remember that old ass game?
Oh,
from like the Game Boy Color?
Yeah, dude.
And
then they tried to make it 3D.
And it was terrible. Just like Bubsy 3D.
Big oof, dude. Ooh.
Yep. So then Twilight's like, what in the heck are you doing, Pinkie? She's like, my tail's twitching. And you know what that means? No, I don't know what that means. It means something's gonna fall from the sky. What? And then it's like, why would there anything fall from the sky? There's barely cloud.
I feel it's necessary to bring up that half the shit that Pinkie Pie does in this episode, either A, the show never properly really recreates if you think about it, or C, it's never done to the extreme level of insanity that this episode produces, and no one really comments on it. It makes sense for Twilight too, because she's that's one thing season 1 I have to give credit for. There was definitely a slow build in the sense you really feel like that she got to know them as the whole season went on. But still, I mean, kind of this whole episode is like, dude, dick move on Twilight, you know?
Mm-hmm. So she gets pummeled in the face with a frog. And it's so weird because when it goes up to Fluttershy, she's like, you okay, Twilight Sparkle? Why the fuck did you say her full name?
I'm like, yeah, is this like is this supposed to be like the day after the premiere? Because I always thought that for the most part, you know, Ticketmaster was like the next chronological episode, but whatever.
Yeah. So she's relocating frogs because I guess there's overpopulation or something. So she's taking them to Froggy Bottom Bog. Why the fuck were the frogs there already? If it's called Froggy Bottom Bog.
Real estate issues? The price of these tadpoles is too damn high.
No, she's got to have that one guy going, it's free real estate.
Hey, it's free real estate.
I fucking love that meme.
Oh my god.
Or there was one where it's like when mosquitoes come by your window and fly in.
Free real estate.
So what happens next is, you know, Twilight's walking along and Spike's like, that was amazing. She could predict it. It's like, come on, that's a coincidence. And Applejack comes up and she's just like, hey, Twilight, how you doing? It's like, well, Pinkie's talking about this like twitchy tails that can predict the future, and she's like, twitchy tail. Pinkie sits and goes hides underneath a cart, and I'm thinking, show staff, what the fuck? You literally just made the country stereotype the superstitious one. Boy.
Yeah, there's a lot of WTF writer moments in this show, but like, because there's season 1 if you think about it, so they were just like, dude, let's unconsciously cram them all into like this one episode.
Yeah, I could see what you mean for that. So then Pinkie's ears start flopping, and once her ears starts flopping, they're like, the fuck? And what's really weird is I actually like the animation with all these little things, like the twitchy tail definitely, shakes and vibrates like a twitch would. With her ears flopping, it flops onto her eyes, which is really cute. And it's like, I need to look up what the floppy ears are. It's been a while since I've seen the episode. Why don't you take the reins for a while?
Okay, so this is the point where shit starts to go haywire because, okay. So, also, this is the first episode with Derpy, if I'm not mistaken. So, shout out to Deep. But, okay, so, like, Twilight is like, dude, Pinkie, how do you exist? And Pinkie Pie's like, I don't know. It's unexplainable and cool, kind of like magic. And then Twilight, like, literally gets up on a soapbox, right?
And well, you're actually missing an entire scene here.
I know.
Okay.
Because I want to. No. Okay, so no, the scene was, I skipped over it, but you're talking about the scene where sorry, my throat. You're talking about the scene where
the bathtub scene.
Bathtub, yeah.
So let me just say, Twilight gets like pummeled with mud.
Yeah, she gets owned.
Yeah, so she's in the bathtub, and I'm sorry, I cannot stop thinking about that meme. So Pinkie's, and I'll tell you the meme in just a second. So Pinkie's talking about how there's little different things that happened. Basically, she's just like, when my back is itchy, it means it's my lucky day. When my knee gets pinchy, that means something scary is about to happen. And it's like, is there anything happening now? Oh, my shoulder's achy. That means there's an alligator in the tub. Grabs Gummy out of there. And I'm sorry. I cannot stop thinking about that meme. Interior crocodile alligator. I drive a Chevrolet
movie theater. That was such a good meme.
Yeah. But basically, it's like, why did you say that was scary? He has no teeth, dummy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a dummy gummy.
So now comes the part where Twilight's like, dude, how do you exist? And Pinkie tries to do the whole thing where she's like, I don't know, dude, there's just some things in life you can't like explain. I just am. So that's what Twilight is like. Magic is totally different because that's something that you study and learn. And this is where my main problem with Twilight started, because they couldn't decide if they were going to make her a magician who's also a scientist, or a scientist who happens to practice magic, or if they were just going to, I don't know, roll her all up in the one and make her some like prototype Vaishni Sundari type of chick. And it led to very much so inconsistent character developments throughout like the first, in my opinion, the first like 5 years of this show. And so she's like false. It is, if she basically says, if it is not something tangible and something that I can hold in my hooves, then not only is it not real, but I also reject it from this plane of reality. Okay, I added in a bit more purple prose, but you get my point.
Well, so it's coming from Smart Purple Book Horse, so purple prose makes sense.
So she kind of like one sec. So she kind of like Clockwork Oranges the shit out of Pinkie Pie and like makes her like hooks her up to a bunch of stuff and gets all these like litmus tests and all this other crap. And she's like, I'm going to scientifically explain spontaneity, dude. And the next like 6 minutes of screen time is spent Twilight trying to understand Pinkie Pie, and then gets her flank handed to her in some pretty funny still slapstick. And the parts where Twilight were getting beat up were funny, but I feel like it should have led to something, because I mean, slapstick for the sake of slapstick is funny, but this is an episode where the slapstick should have like had like something at the end of it to like, I'm not saying to warrant the slapstick, but to like give some credence and depth to the slapstick. Mm-hmm. Now I need to clarify, not everything of writing needs like Evangelion, BoJack Horseman levels of depth. Simple is great still, but this is an episode where I think it was a missed opportunity because, again, the next 6 minutes are, there's the one scene near the end where they got the Rapidash joke because Twilight's headed, because she like lights up on fire and basically turns into the like the dream evil version of Celestia from that one episode like 2 years ago.
And when I think of that, I automatically think of it. Pardon me while I burst into flames.
Yeah, dude. So bunch of slapstick, bunch of nonsense. Literally, the episode ends with, and quote me, correct me if I'm wrong, but the episode ends basically with Twilight being like, "Screw it, I'm not gonna try to explain Pinkie Pie. I'm just gonna accept the fact that some things are unexplainable." But
let me just say, the entire episode is Twilight just having to go and answer the question of it's Pinkie Pie, don't question it.
And I'm not going to lie, I used to like the Pinkie Pie don't question it thing, but maybe it's just because the show was around for so long and they toned it back. But around season 4 or 5, to me, it was at an all-time worst. It's better now, but, the Pinkie Pie, that's why I grew really disconcerted. That's why I grew really disenchanted with Discord, was because it's like, oh, it's Discord, so blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, you can't just cut characters breaks like that.
You should never have to give a character. Okay, you should never have to have one Deus Ex Machina explanation for a character. That's lazy writing.
I mean, okay, I'll use an example. You're wearing a Deadpool shirt. When they do that shit with Deadpool in the comics, they either give his spontaneous thing. I mean, yeah, he breaks the fourth wall and all that, but beyond that, they not only do they give him death, but they give him context. That's the important thing here. And I get it, this is a kid's show, so it's not fair to compare Pinkie Pie to Deadpool. But if you've seen as much Deadpool Pinkie Pie shipping as I did back in 2012, and then after DC reworked Harley Quinn into sort of being DC's Deadpool, even though realistically they kind of already had that with Lobo, then they started bringing her into the mix. Whatever. I just feel like there are kids shows like this one that take the time to give their characters that kind of depth. And this show has done that. And this show did that in its first season, but it did not here. And this isn't Dave Polsky's first episode. He's worked like for Nickelodeon before, and I think Cartoon Network before this. I don't know. So after this episode, I mean, and you have to remember, a lot of the people watching this show, they were dudes like us, where they were late teens, early 20s at the time. So everyone got on their philosophical high horse and tried to be like, oh, this show is a condemnation of religion. And yet other people going like, actually, this show's about making atheists look like a-holes, back and forth. In my This episode was too bloated for its own good with characters. If they had tried this episode now, it could work. But they tried it with characters that weren't developed enough for it, and it just fell flat. Now, like I said, to give it a final score, will be...
First of all, before we get to our scores, there's a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, Twilight getting more and more increasingly hurt as the episode goes on. That's funny. Her falling down the apple cellar, her literally having to be in a wheelchair with casts all over her body, and then getting a fucking anvil piano hay bale dropped on her, and then it's derpy, as they're trying to move someone. That was funny. But at the same time, you also forgot we had a mythological creature in this, but just like some putting to watch over me, it wasn't enough to save the episode. We had the Hydra that can walk, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. They should use Hydras more in this show. They're lit.
Mm-hmm. And I just like the way the Hydra moves and everything in terms of like the three heads. Like, there's one where one of them like bangs into a tree. So you have one that's sitting there, one kind of dizzy, one that has a tree in its mouth, and the other one that's just laughing. So that's pretty funny. But again, they're not enough to save the episode. It's pretty formulaic, pretty, like you were saying, bloated for its own good, and should have been done later in the series when we have more development for the characters.
Right.
Maybe something along the lines of like, maybe Twilight has been noticing things over the course of the first couple years, and she wants to finally figure it out, and then realizes that she can't. And then have that be a lesson of, science can't explain everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I would actually score this a 6.5.
I was gonna give it that, but then I remembered, that's the same score that I gave Three's a Crowd, and I don't want to do that. So I think that's the same crowd. So I was gonna it's not, but it's this episode was never in one of my top favorites, and I feel like it hasn't aged that great anyway. I mean, I appreciate the memes we got out of it, but to be honest, that's about it.
Okay, you cut out when you said your score.
Oh, sorry. I said I give it like 6.75 because like least favorite was never one of my, so it's that's my word.
You know what? Actually, that makes a lot of sense. You know what? I'm gonna bump mine to a 6.7.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not a terrible episode, but it's really not a great episode either. We have a lot better episodes coming up. Next week, I could already tell that you're gonna be bitching and moaning about Dash.
Next week is the episode where everyone in the fandom thinks I'm some like edgelord contrarian, which, yeah, I am, but not for Friendship is Magic.
And I'll have a lot to say about next week's episode because I actually enjoy.
I mean, it's arguably iconic of the show.
So we may be able to do it later this week. We may have to wait until next week. We'll see what happens. But yeah. So thanks all for watching this review. And that's it from me, John.
And that's it from me, Snakeskin.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Peace out, Dragon.
Adios.